Hello and welcome to my final project. For this project, I created a sort of grocery list generation app, if you will, for people like myself who often forget to write things down before I go do my grocery shopping. Now, this is a very basic, very rough version. There could be some expansions and changes in the future, but for right now, let's just jump into it. So this is the GUI for the app in its current state. We've got some data entry on this side, some buttons, and we've got some drop downs where the list will populate. So let's go ahead and start entering in some items here so we can show this running for you. We're going to get some eggs. Eggs are in the dairy section, and this is their UPC. Now that is an actual UPC for some brand of eggs. I don't remember which specific one, but it is an actual UPC. When we click add to the cupboard, it puts it on this drop down here, which is our currently in cupboard drop down, and that shows you what's currently in there. You can click on things, but you can't edit anything in here. Just the same as you can click on these, but you can't edit anything here. You can't click on any of these boxes to manually change those. You have to use the spinner numbers, and you can't click or change anything in this box. Literally, the only thing you're allowed to type in is product name and product UPC. Anyway, let's keep going. Let's get some milk. That's also in the dairy. And UPC for milk, we'll say that goes 7 days from now. We're going to add that. So as you can see, eggs, milk. Okay. Now we're probably not going to talk for a second here while I go ahead and input some other items just to make it go a little bit quicker. So unfortunately, you will not hear my beautiful voice for a second. With canned corn, that's a unique one because it will expire much sooner, or much later rather. So one thing with the spinners is that I don't have them set up to cycle. So you have to go back on that one and saying you'll have to update the year for that. So we'll say this lasts 6 months and back to adding items. Okay, so now that we've got a cupboard stocked with some items, let's go ahead and we're going to say we're going to update our grocery list. Now, this grocery list, when we update it using the button here, it's only going to populate with items that are less than 10 days. So update. So since we're working with a priority queue and it functions on a heap, you will get things in order, but sometimes you might get something down here that's not. Since it is a priority queue, the number one item will always be the soonest expiration. So let's say if we get rid of this ground beef, now the queue's been updated and now bananas are there. So that's how it works with valid inputs. Now I'm going to reset everything, which completely removes everything out of here. And so as we can see, we're going to do blank. So let's start getting into some of the validation. if we don't have anything entered, it's going to say, please enter a name for the item. Please select a section for the item. So with these, name has to have something, and you have to choose something out of this section. Now, I know what you're saying is, Jeff, this UPC didn't have anything in it either. Well, if we add that, now we can see that it's going to update and say we need to put a UPC for the item. The way that it's listed, it's working off of the exceptions, and we didn't get to this section for the UPC before an exception was thrown, so that didn't throw that tag. Now, the other thing that I want to mention with how we're doing this is, let's say I'm going to try to put something that expires before today. Oh, I get a validation that says you can't have an item that expires before today. Okay, so let's go back and we'll say this is going to expire December or February of next year. Now, February, as you know, has 28 or 29 days, so we'll try to say 31 days. This month only has 29 days. Okay, so let's go to April. April, I believe, only has 30 days. This only has 30 days. So we've set up some validations to ensure that you can't add days to a month that doesn't have, you can't have 31 days on a month that doesn't have 31 days. We don't check for leap years, but that's how validations function on some of that end. Now, when we get into the meat and potatoes, we've got our grocery item, which is the object that you add to your cupboard and to the grocery list. It's just a pretty standard POJO. We've got a couple of variables here. I had more. I ended up taking them out to make the project a little simpler, but we can go through and add new things in future versions. Again, just pretty simple getters, setters, and a toString. When we move to the inventory, this is what currently is what's in your cupboard. So that is a linked list. We've got a bunch of methods that work with that linked list. Pretty simple and straightforward. Then when we move to the grocery list, that's what you're going to take to the store. That's based off the priority queue, which uses its own comparator, which is just using an expiration date, comparing the expiration dates on the item. Pretty straightforward off that. Again, just some methods that work with the priority queue. And then we have our sorting method, which is an insertion sort, and then a print method. We can jump over to the unit tests real quick before we get into the nitty gritty. I have about 30 total tests involved here. I'm not going to go through all of them, so we'll just run the JUnit test. 30 tests, 30 pass, no errors, all green, what everybody likes to see. Again, just bunches of unit tests for all the different methods and stuff. Now, when we get into the driver, this is where I lose some modularity because I decided to make everything all in one. I did try to break things out into some different frames, but it just didn't work the way that I wanted it to, so this is how we ended up. When we start, we just make the frame, add the label to it, and then we're going to start working in sections. Now, this is for the names. Let me go ahead and we're just going to start this up real quick so we can kind of see what's going on. So name is going to correlate here with the product name field. Section would cover everything for product section. As we can see, the combo box I pre-populated, so we're only allowing the user to use what I'm telling them they can use. And UPC, expirations, we've got some validations for the expirations to make sure that it is in the appropriate ranges from start to end. Same with dates, you can only go from 1 to 31. And then for the years, starting with the current year going through, I think I set the max as 15 years from the current year. That can be adjusted as need be. Then when we go to the display fields here, we've got our display for the cupboard, which is this one. If we go back to the dates, I can't go higher than 12. I can't go less than 1. I can't go higher than 31. I can't go less than 1. And I can only go as high as 15 years is what I set it for. And display fields and all that good stuff. Then we move into the buttons. We've got the submit button, which is going to be adding an object to the cupboard. So I've created this array that just has integers in it, and those, as you can see, are the months that have 30 days. I use that array to use as part of my verification, my input validation. So when you hit the button, it takes the values out of these month fields. We convert them to integers because we've only allowed specific things in those fields. And then here we've got some of our validations. So here we see the check where if it is a month that is in this array, and that is what we are trying to set for, it'll say, hey, this only has 30 days. And the same if we try to set a date above 29 days in the month of February, it says we only have 29 days. The section field automatically starts at -1. That way it doesn't start with a default item in there. If you don't select anything, throws an error. And then we move down into this one for the expiration dates, to where if it's before today's date, it throws the error that says can't expire before today. If there's nothing in the name field, it'll say, hey, please enter a name. Same if you don't enter the UPC, it'll say, hey, enter the UPC, and those pop up in their specific locations. If it passes all of the validations saying that, hey, all of this information as far as I am concerned is correct, then we add the item to the back of that grocery, in the back of the cupboard. And by doing that, we create the new item here with all of the information that we had just gathered. And then we add that to the display field, to that combo box with all of our items that are in that cupboard currently. And then once all of it's done, we reset all of the fields that had data back to their default of nothing. And then we move into the remove. This one covers if you select something from the cupboard in that drop-down box, it will remove it, specifically repopulate the list in that cupboard drop-down as well as your grocery list. And then this button is the update list button, which will take everything from your cupboard and populate your grocery list. And then a button which again just clears everything out of it. The bottom section here, I have a bunch of stuff that I've commented out. This is another button that I've currently hidden. All it does is it just pre-populates the cupboard with some just generic items, and I use that for testing purposes. I commented it out because no one really needs to use that. But if you're playing around and you want to, you can uncomment it and use that button again. As you can see, it'll just comment out everything that is in that block comment. That is the basics of my app. In the future, it could look for some updates. Maybe we could add pictures to where we could scan UPCs instead of typing everything. Maybe we could add a database on the back end to preserve things for longer than just the app is going. The world is our oyster, so to speak, but for right now, this is where my project is. Thank you for taking the time. I very much appreciate it, and have a good day.